Hi, this is Adetinpo Thomas, and you are tuning in for the Well Actually podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of the Well Actually podcast. I'm your host, Toju. Thank you for listening and watching, however you may be listening and watching.
Yeah.
Before we get started, make sure you subscribe, like, share this episode with your friends, your family, and people you think that might get something out of it. Joining us today, we have a very special guest, star of the small and big screen, star of the stage, the one, the only Adetinpo Thomas.
Hey, that's me. Hello, thank you for having me, Tonju.
Of course. So let's just jump right into it. I wanted to find out, what first pulled you towards acting?
Good question. And this might not be a useful answer, but I was born with an unreasonable amount of audacity.
Okay.
So, especially being a little dark-skinned Nigerian girl, that isn't always received well, but I have always kind of been comfortable taking up space and being seen. So I would do little, all the kids are at our house for a party, and then the kids put on a play for the parents who were very annoyed that we turned off Yinka IFLA and made them stop drinking to watch us act.
Oh, wow.
There's a lady who came into my elementary school once, and I did a play when I was 6 years old, but it felt very inevitable and high key by force. By the time I was in college and coming out of college, but allegedly, I knew at 12 years old that I wanted to do this. I found a journal in my bedroom in my mom's house that was I guess I'll just be an actor at 12. So apparently always.
Wow. Okay. It sort of makes sense when seeing the various mediums that you've worked on.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it just feels natural for you, or was working across several mediums always in the cards for you, or did you think you were always going to be on one stage or one type of stage?
When all was said and done, was aiming for Broadway plays. In high school, though, to be fair, I thought I'd be in the ensemble of Wicked.
Okay.
Balancing that well or dance that well. So it wasn't one of those. So I was okay, just regular plays then. And it was actually leaving grad school when I was oh, let me give film and TV a try, because I read younger than I am. And there's not a whole lot on stage for Black women in their 20s. And this is when I was having this conversation with a friend of mine. So I moved from Connecticut back to Atlanta and got an agent, and so much was filming here. So that really worked out. And then that's where I've been, I almost said stuck. That's where I've been since, just because those are the opportunities that have presented themselves. And then this time last year, I actually did a play for the first time in 10 years. And that was just I loved it so much.
So what took you back to being on stage?
Just the opportunity. Famously, Viola Davis, during an acceptance speech for, I think, a Golden Globe for, I think, How to Get Away with Murder, she said the only thing that keeps Black women from that level of achievement is opportunity. So there are several theaters here, and there were more before the pandemic here in Atlanta, but one of the theaters had posted auditions for a play, not just in the secret actor places, but it was on Instagram, and 5 different people sent me the thing, and I was oh, this sounds perfect for me. So I submitted, and a couple of auditions later, I ended up being in the play.
Okay, so you mentioned 2 things there. I want to put a pin in the whole agent part, but you said submitting. So what do you mean by submitting?
So unless you are name actor, which means essentially A-list, B-list, people, if someone said your name, they'd recognize you. You have to audition for roles. So Denzel, I don't think he's auditioning for anything anymore, right? But we do know that Ariana Grande had to audition 10 times to be Glenda in Wicked. So I'm also not Ariana, but I still have to audition for things. So when an audition is posted by a casting director, after getting that information from producers, director for a project, depending on the context, as an actor, I can submit myself directly to this casting director, or my agent would submit me to the casting director. But since this is theater and I don't have like stage theater reps in Atlanta, I saw it for myself, submitted myself. And that's headshot, and I submitted a self-tape. So I taped myself at home doing a scene from the play and sent it in.
Okay. All right. So you said you don't have like theater representation, but you have an agent like on the film and TV side.
Yeah.
What's the process like of actually getting an agent?
Child. I had the luckiest ancestors were looking out for me, like chance to get an agent. And it was truly like I moved back to Atlanta in December. By January, when everyone was back in the office, I had an agent. I know people who've spent 2 years trying to get an agent to pick them up. So it really varies, but generally speaking, you send a brief but polite email that's like, hey, my name is such and such, and I live in such and such. I was in this project and this project. Ideally, you have something to reference. Or I know so-and-so who you rep, who's done this and this, and I really admire your work. Here's my headshot, resume, and reel. I look forward to continuing a conversation about partnership or representation. And then you send that off and hope the person opens the email. What I do for friends, or what I advocate for, is if you do know somebody in the agency, that referral goes a long way, especially if you're good or they trust you. So I will send that email myself, and then also send that email to that person, or do this on behalf of someone else, and then send it as well, because they're more likely to open the email from a name they already know, especially if the person's on their roster, and then see, oh, okay, let's watch the thing. What gets difficult with that is you need to have experience to have a resume. You need to have experience to have a reel. So if you're starting at a place that is before even those things exist, then you see that the process kind of gets prolonged.
I think for most people, they might have had it backwards, where you're soliciting the agent, and what we typically see is agents soliciting stars or actors. So wow. Okay. So I guess it flips the further along you get, maybe.
I think so. So there's a certain point, just exactly how you said, in someone's career, where an agent is now trying to poach them. And that's, it's poaching. So it's slightly frowned upon, but people will kind of try to court you away. Like, I'm sure, I forget who like Zendaya is repped by, but I'm sure if another agency was trying to pull her away, like that would cause some controversy amongst the agents, because it's, shady, right? It's a little, you're poaching somebody from who's getting money made on behalf of the agency. So no, right now it's me hunting people down. But give it a couple projects, and ideally it's somebody else going, hey, I love your stuff. Like, do you need a manager, or do you need reps in New York, LA?
How common is it to be without representation?
Oh, incredibly common. And it depends on where you are regionally, and then also what you're wanting for yourself. Right? Because if I was just trying to do theater across the country, I wouldn't need an agent per se. But by the time you start getting up there and up there in your theater career, you would have reps who are trying to get you lead roles in these projects. If you're trying to do studio level film, TV kind of projects, those opportunities are behind the gate of having an agent. So there's some people in Atlanta who will cast actual speaking roles on TV and will post those online. But generally speaking, you can't get access to those.
So that's only agents will have access to that kind of casting decision, or those casting opportunities?
For, I want to say 95% of the time, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And then if you're just like walking off the street, you might be able to submit to like a student film, or, indie filmmaker making like a no budget short film. But the more money that is riding on it, the more legitimate they expect the person to be, to make sure it like succeeds. And that's why you see A-listers get cast in so much, and they don't give new faces as much of a chance sometimes, because they want to make sure it's guaranteed to sell.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, back in my day, in the 90s, it used to kind of just be whoever, and that's a generalization, right? And I was a child, so who knows if I'm not remembering people repeating. But there used to be more opportunity, and now studios, especially when you fold in streamers, are not as adventurous with the kind of stories that are being told, and they're not willing to take the risk of the thing not making them money back, because with the introduction of streamers, you're now having to fold in the concerns of shareholders.
Okay.
Sips tea.
So, yeah, I mean, that was, thank you for clearing that up for us, because there are a lot of misconceptions, and that leads me to the next thing. Like, what other misconceptions do you think about Hollywood, or about the movie industry, or about just the product that we're seeing on TV? What other misconceptions do you think us lay people have?
I'm like, how sad am I willing to make this?
Oh boy.
I would sincerely say the majority of what people think they understand about being an actor in the industry is a lie, or some sort of like hyperbolic fallacy. In Atlanta, when things were filming a lot, if somebody were to say, oh, they got like 10 day player roles that year, people would be like, oh, okay, like so-and-so's really working. And mind you, those things, if it's just for the day, you're making $1,000 a day.
Oh.
But when you start to do the math on that, that means you, who had a very successful year, made approximately $10,000.
Okay.
If you're doing like kind of one line, maybe one scene type things. So there's that. You don't make very much. And even when it's a success on paper, it's also not necessarily financially sustainable. This used to be different 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. But nowadays, being a journeyman actor is what they call it, a kind of a blue collar actor, like you're the guest star, so the medium tier kind of character in a bunch of stuff. You could live off of that and have like a genuine like middle class existence, because those people are making closer to like $8,000 to $10,000 an episode, and you do enough of those for the right network, then that plus residuals over time, like you can just live comfortably, and you're getting residual checks as you're waiting in between projects. Now you don't get paid that much, so people who, especially in this region, have the opportunity to be guest stars frequently still end up having some sort of other job, because financially it's not sustainable. So just to break down guest star, series regular, and co-star.
Okay.
I used to think co-star was like you are one of the stars. Co-star is actually the smallest designation. That means you have one of the smallest parts. Yes. Guest star is like if you're watching like Law and Order or like a medical show, that's the person who's like sick that week. That's the murderer of the week. And then the series regular is who the story is built around, and they end up being like the framework of the story. Those people could make anywhere from 10, 15, 20,000 an episode to $1 million plus. So I know folks who, I have a friend who's on a procedural, which is like a crime drama or a medical drama. So every week is kind of just like a different killer this week or different patient this week. And when she was on not a regular TV show, when she was a guest star, she was making like $10,000 an episode, and she was in like 15. So you're like, okay, how are you feeling on that? She booked a series regular on something else, and now she's making $50K an episode. So when you do a 10 episode season, a 20 episode season, all of a sudden that's a different category of money for real. So that's amazing. And you see my eyes. I'm like, oh, so much money. You're like, oh shit, that's so much money. The cast of Friends by the final season was making $1 million an episode.
Damn.
So they would make more in residuals than most people make in a year doing a regular full-time job. Damn. There's a really good interview called on Actors on Actors, and it's Taraji P. Henson and what's this woman's name? She plays Meredith Grey in Grey's Anatomy. I forget her real name.
Ellen Pompeo or something like that?
Yeah. The two of them are talking about money. And people get on Taraji about talking about money, but you need to be transparent because people don't know what they're signing up for. And mind you, you asked me this question about 3 minutes ago, and I'm still just talking about money. Taraji was talking about how Tyler Perry is one of the only people who will meet her quote every time she books something, it's like she's never booked anything before, and people want to act brand new about what rate she deserves, though she's been doing this for like 25 plus years. Ellen Pompeo makes 20 mil for the year.
Yeah, $575 per episode.
And Taraji said they wanted to pay her, I think she made like $300K doing Curious Case of Benjamin Button. And they made her find her own place to live and didn't compensate her for it. The money is not what people think it is. And you have to work consistently for quite a while for it to be sustainable, even remotely. So I think about some of the people who were guest stars on Insecure. And I haven't really seen some of them on anything since then, but Insecure was so popular. It's hard to take a step back and then go, okay, well, let me get a corporate gig in between bookings because this is taking a while. We went on strike. There was the COVID. There were so many other things going on. Financially, it is not what people think it is. So like when people are getting on Sydney Sweeney, which at this point, apparently rightfully so because of what's going on there. But when she was saying like, you guys think I make a lot of money, but I couldn't take like 6 months to like stop and have a kid. Like that's why I'm doing all of these brand deals because I don't make enough as an actor to have the life you think I have. And people jump down her throat about something else. But like, even on that level, like people are not making that much money. So money aside, it is a different game now because you can self-tape. You can tape yourself at home auditioning. So you don't necessarily need to live in LA or New York to audition for something. But living in LA or New York makes your chances of getting a big role, I don't know, 90% higher because they know you physically, they know you're there. And then those agents are the ones getting access to those auditions. So region does still matter, even if people want to say it doesn't, at least where your reps are located, but you can tape things in your living room. So I was in the Color Purple movie. I taped that original audition. I'm at this table.
Oh, okay.
I taped my Black Lightning audition. I went somewhere, but it was still like kind of almost a homemade studio. Like it was guys who like set it up and have a small business, like helping people tape their auditions. And I did that remotely, never went into the room, booked it straight from tape, but I was in 8 episodes. So there's more opportunity, but in a way there's also less opportunity because there's so many people now being given opportunities. And then you have no sense of whether or not anybody actually watches your auditions, which is probably a separate conversation. So the opportunities are odd, sparse, and when you get them, they might not pay very well. You actually need to train. Unless you want to be cast to play yourself, which is very specific. If you want to be any sort of transformational actor, you need to have training. You need to actually sit down and like hone your craft. It's like anything. I wouldn't expect somebody to walk off the street and be able to weld. I wouldn't expect somebody to walk off the street and be able to act. Everyone is capable of acting because all you're doing is being someone else. But there's a framework that allows you to do that repeatedly in a way that is safe and healthy for you mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and then also is actually engaging for other people to watch. It takes 15 years to be an overnight success. That's one of my favorite quotes I've heard. People think you just walk off the street, and some people do, but you rise that quickly. You also burn out that quickly usually. So if you want a long, sustainable career, you end up doing stuff and being, saying one line on something, and then you work up to the bigger parts. If you go back and watch stuff now from the 90s, you'll recognize a lot of people who are now A-listers who showed up and disappeared immediately afterwards, So
you touched on a couple of the roles that you've been in, but I want to start from what I consider small, being an outsider, and then we'll go up. So the first role I wanted to get to was acting as a zombie on The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was amazing because I was such a huge fan of the show. Sorry. So it was cool to have done it. The actual experience of it, not great. Because you're in that makeup and it takes hours to be put in and hours to get off. And for whatever reason, I feel like I only worked on the show. They never really talk about when the zombie apocalypse started. So everybody's in this kind of like neutral fall clothing, which is not warm enough for winter and too hot for summer, but they filmed all year. So you're also then either really hot or really cold and then in this heavy makeup. But you aren't cast through an agent for that stuff. That's technically background casting. So that's extras casting. So you're just like submit your stuff, and if they choose you, you have a sufficient look and like a good enough look, then you end up getting to do it. And what's actually really cool is being able to be a zombie on the show jumped into me being Denai's photo double and stand-in for half a season.
Really?
Yeah, and that's not something you'd put on a resume, but I was like her carbon copy when you put us in costume.
That's another misconception. So you got to experience something that you didn't even submit for.
Right. And I asked for it, right? Because there are times, there was a point where I had braids in, and Greg Nicotero himself was like, have you talked to them about standing in for Denai? And I was like, yes, sir. And he's like, okay, good.
And so who's that? Is he a showrunner, or who's that?
He's the creator of the show.
Okay.
He's one of the like big, like behind the makeup, behind the concept of The Walking Dead. So he said something. Of course I knew Extras Casting at that point. I think the person who was doing it was stepping away anyway, so I was able to step in, and it wasn't for very long, but I learned a lot in real time. I think it's really important to touch as many roles on set as possible. So one, you have a sense of what's going on, but also you understand the gravity of what everybody's job is. I think that changes the way you show up, because I think people find actors to be really self-centered or just like not knowledgeable, not realizing that actors are really coddled and infantilized on set. And if you just step straight into acting, you have no idea what's happening outside of your performance. But now I'm in a place where I can turn to the focus puller who's working with a camera, now I'm just throwing out jargon, and understand what the frame is, so I know if they're looking at my whole body or just my face, and being able to modulate my performance to that.
So you'd perform differently if it was like full body versus just your face?
Mm-hmm. Because I think, and this is similar to like on stage acting, right? Because people are far away, sometimes an emotion or a gesture can be all of you. But if you're right here, but I'm moving my arms a bunch, now all of a sudden my head is just like in the frame bobbling around like a bobblehead, which isn't useful for editing. And those kinds of little things end up being why sometimes they'll just completely like cut around looking at somebody who's talking. So the sooner you're able to refine stuff like that, the more likely you are for them to actually use what they recorded of you, I found.
All right. So you also touched on your 8-episode arc on Black Lightning.
Yeah.
And you have the fortune of being on a DC product and a Marvel product.
Yes.
So I guess before we dive into each of them, like what would you say was similar about the experiences between DC and Marvel, and what was like the biggest difference?
Similar. There's technical things you have to accommodate when you're working with so much visual effects. Because you need to keep in mind like, oh, and there needs to be a lightning bolt here, for example, or the visual effects person needs us to do it again, but they're going to put this like orb in the middle of the room to make sure they can capture all the like shadows and things that are naturally falling so they can do what they need to do in post. So stuff like that gets really technical. Luckily, I've never had to do any like tennis ball acting on a green screen. Like it's all been like in rooms with people, but there are those things. I think IP is always something that informs. I didn't work much with the writers at all of Black Lightning, but I do remember there being moments of, well, what about the character in the comics? Jamila Olsen, who I played in Black Lightning, I think was supposed to be like an alt universe of Jimmy Olsen, which I don't think anybody caught, but supposed to be Jimmy Olsen, which was really cool because that's why I got to exist in the first place. And I'm sure they pulled that name just for that reason. Similar to my character in a Hawkeye, they went and grabbed a real comic book character and then just kind of morphed it and made sense for this, because that character did interact with Hawkeye in the comics back in the 80s. What was really different was budget, which also just happens depending on network and investment from whoever, right? So CW had a different stake in Black Lightning than Disney Plus had and Marvel doing Hawkeye, especially because you have a character coming from a movie into a TV show versus like this is the only place this character exists. At least this is the only universe this character exists. So money, their stakes felt higher on Hawkeye, I think. And simultaneously, I felt freer to kind of do what felt right as an actor and character. So there's a lot more, we were allowed to improv a lot more on Hawkeye than I was allowed to on Black Lightning, for example, because I was very much a supplemental character in Black Lightning. And I was feeling kind of a vacuum that eventually was filled, but I was still around. So they kind of were like, where do we put her? Until they just didn't put me anywhere. And with Hawkeye, we were the sidekicks to the superheroes. So I was really surprised in the process when I showed up to like, they wanted to kind of do a fitting for clothes and like hair and makeup wanted to like see me, they could make choices. And they were asking me what I thought about my hairstyles and like what kind of clothes I thought I would wear. And I've never had that truly be the case for a character until I got to Hawkeye. There's some conversation with Black Lightning, but it was what I thought was less important by a lot.
Okay. Wow. All right. So yeah, I remember in Black Lightning, I would have considered you a bit of, or your character, a bit of a troublemaker. Someone who's very, very self-righteous, I would say, of let's get the truth out there, no matter the cost. And in Hawkeye, you were, you know, a LARPer and a cop who I'd say doesn't necessarily follow. Yeah. Okay.
Probably a dirty cop.
Yeah, it doesn't really follow procedure when it comes to Hawkeye, but yeah, so like even I think the tenor of the situations were much different as well. There was a lot more levity in Hawkeye than there was in Black Lightning. Is there a difference when you are filming for like Black Lightning where you know they're going to be commercials versus something like with Hawkeye where you know it's just a straight to streamer and they're typically on?
So that's a fantastic question that most people never consider. Yes, all TV that has commercial breaks have to adjust for pacing. And the end of certain scenes need to feel like there's a cliffhanger, the stakes are really high because you need people to come back after the commercial break. And sometimes those breaks are clear in the script, and sometimes you just need to make sure that like when you're done talking and the scene is over, you like look back over your shoulder so they can capture something and then, you know, smash to black, bite some tide versus with Hawkeye. And I don't know what the time count was for episodes, but I'm pretty sure with all the Marvel TV shows, the episodes kind of vary in length based on what they needed to be able to push into it. So that wasn't there, but matching the tone of the story was important. Because there'd be jokes we would make and they're like, all right, let's dial that back or let's figure that out. That just didn't fit. And I think we were reaching much more for tone with Hawkeye and we're reaching much more for pacing with Black Lightning because it was on television. Great question.
As an outsider, my like perception of things might be different, but I'd say as someone without an IMDb, looking at someone with an IMDb and going through the credits and seeing The Color Purple. So that's produced by Steven Spielberg and Oprah, starring Fantasia, Sierra, like the list goes, like even Corey Hawkins, like I'm a big fan of him because from back when he was on 24, Live Another Day, and then of course Straight Outta Compton, and like the cast is extensive. So I want to know, like, what was it like being on set, and then two, sharing scenes with like Tamala Mann and Fantasia? Like, what was that like?
I love this question and I'm going to answer it, but I want to put a pin in Corey Hawkins because one of the times I actually got to be in like full on zombie makeup, the intention was to feature me was, I don't know if you remember this on the show, because he started on Walking Dead. That actually, I think, is what got him the opportunity to do 24. And there was an episode where him, and I want to say the character's name was Tara, were like looking for something and they couldn't quite find it, and she couldn't find him later, and she was like, oh my god, he's been turned, and they didn't know like where he might be, and then she sees somebody in the distance with braids, and the zombie turns around and it's not him, but it was me.
Wow. Oh, okay. See, full circle.
I think that's the zombie picture I have on IMDb. So that's actually a really cool moment. And I got to see him at the table read. I got to be at the table read for Color Purple before I officially booked it. And I was able to be like, hey, this is so random, but I want you to know that this thing happened. Can we take a picture? And we did. And we like had a nice chuckle about it. But to answer your actual question, working on the Color Purple was so grounding and affirming, and it was also a real like honor, but I think affirming might be the biggest one. So people talk about imposter syndrome, which is fair because of course you're going to feel like an imposter in a room no one intended for you to be in. However, that was probably one of the times in my life where I did not feel like I needed to try and regulate my anxiety so that I didn't mess up. Like I was like, I'm not here on accident. Because what happened with the table read was I read all of the Black female characters that hadn't been cast yet or couldn't be there, which means I also read her, like the R&B artist. I read her part with the main cast during the table read as well. So I was like, Coleman Domingo would say hi to me in the morning. I was like, I've made it. So then to be on set, especially with so many people who their background was rich in music, there was a real humility and like grounded energy around them. I have actually never worked with somebody that I thought was a complete like douchebag because they thought they were famous and more important than me. But particularly sitting next to Miss Tamala Mann or working directly with Fantasia, they were just so warm and welcoming. They would talk to each other about acting choices they were making. And it felt very collaborative, and I really appreciated that. And now watching the film in hindsight, I realize why I was given so much I was allowed to have so much authority or quote power, and I can unpack that a little bit. And I appreciate Blitz, who's the director of Color Purple, for treating me like a colleague while we were there. Are you watching Wonder Man right now?
I just finished it.
Okay, so we're only on like episode 3. Don't ruin it for me. Okay. But when he goes to set and he's like asking all those questions and making all these suggestions, and the way I was cringing on our couch for him, because you often learn the hard way, you're not supposed to do that. If you are not important enough, there's literally no hard feelings, no time for your opinion about a script where you play a character that is going to be gone at the end of the episode. Unless you are famous, your input is not necessary and is actually kind of inappropriate. But you don't realize that, especially if you have like all this training, you've gone to Juilliard, and then you finally show up on set and you're like, well, actually, I was thinking that, is it possible that my breakfast be omelets? Because my character would eat omelets. Like people will be so fucking tired of you, bro. So that concern can be there. But working on Hawkeye, working on Color Purple, I did not feel like any questions or suggestions I might have would be treated with that kind of animosity or annoyance. I was worried about it a lot on Black Lightning. I don't know that I actually received any of it, but I know I had a lot of anxiety around it there. But by the time we get to Color Purple and I realize the scene we're working on today is the scene I'm doing, then all of a sudden there's an ease to like, actually, I do have a question about this, like in this blocking, because there was a particular, I don't remember what the line was, but the way we had kind of blocked the scene, it just like, I could not get it out of my mouth. I couldn't remember it. And it was like something about the way we're moving is like stopping the momentum of that thought. It wasn't treated like some like actor nonsense. They're like, oh, okay, like what do you think should be? And I was like, well, I feel like I would still kind of hang here for a moment. Because the thing is, when they're doing the wide shots that are establishing stuff, once you kind of lock that in, so the edits make sense, you can't pivot too much from the original blocking once you keep going. So as we're doing the original like wide shot blocking, I was like, this is my chance, because if I'm having trouble getting this out of my mouth now, in 6 hours when it's my coverage and they're trying to shoot my close-ups and I still can't say it, that's going to be incredibly frustrating for them. They're going to waste money. It's going to make me look awful as an actor because I can't do it, but it's genuinely like, it doesn't function. Like, something about this doesn't function. And we talked through it for maybe 45 seconds. Never had a problem the rest of the day.
Oh.
So it's like, sometimes there's space and time for that, and it's okay. And sometimes it's not. But one of the things, to be succinct, this is a 17-minute long answer. One of the things I loved so much about working on that project and working with those people is I was welcomed like a peer, and like an artist, which I like to consider myself to be.
Okay.
And that was really cool.
I guess, like you said, like that was your second time technically working with Corey Hawkins. When you're in a room like that, or in rooms where they're reading for something, or like, how does that relationship, like how do pre-existing relationships, or how have pre-existing relationships affected or impacted your career, do you think?
That's a good question. To be fair, that table read was the first time I'd met Corey. I just played a zombie that looked like him in the past.
Yeah.
I would say the pre-existing relationships that matter the most to actual career trajectory for where I'm at is with like casting directors or producers, directors. So it's like, oh, we couldn't use so-and-so in that one episode, but I think this role would be really good for them, and are able to bring that back. Because so much of it is like familiarity and trust in your character as a human being. Sometimes you can be really good. You can be a really good actor, but they know you're going to be bullshitting on set, and you might keep you from an opportunity. If you're really famous, sometimes people are willing to like roll their eyes, but let you do it. But if you're up and coming and people think you're going to be wilding out, that can stop you from booking stuff just on its own. So knowing that casting was rooting for me with some of these opportunities, and then also producers who have had to like sign off on me in the past, being the same producers who are looking at my name come across the table again going, oh, okay. Because people don't know this, but in the casting process, which is crazy, even for the smallest role, because of how many steps there are, even by the time you get the audition, it's possible hundreds of people have been filtered out for you to get the audition in the first place. So that's already a win. Then casting will watch however many auditions, casting directors will, and will narrow that down and send that to producers and directors. They'll choose one or two people that they really like. Casting still needs to make sure they're available. And then when they finally choose one person, that means producers and directors said yes, casting said yes, but you still need the network to say yes and the studio to say yes.
What would be a reason that either of those last two would say no?
Child, I don't know, but I've heard people book stuff and the studio says no. So by the time we get to Color Purple, that's my third or fourth time coming across the desk of the casting director for Warner Brothers.
Okay.
Where that's just an easy like, oh yeah, she was fine last time. That should be okay. I'm not too concerned with not passing the like going up for approval to that degree, but I don't know what it would take, because sometimes it can be stupid stuff. She looks too much like my ex-wife, which just tarnished my opinion of her audition. Choose somebody else. Too tall, too short. I mean, there's so many things. So much of casting has nothing to do with whether or not you're good. And that's why you'll watch stuff and people are bad. Respectfully.
Respectfully, of course. Okay. So I don't want to take us all the way back to the beginning, but for you, what was the moment where you first thought, okay, I could actually do this for a living? Like, this could actually be a job for me.
I can do this for a living. This can be a job for me. My first commercial, which was very conveniently the first quarter I had that first agent. I'd booked like 30 seconds. No, I had booked a spot in what was a 30-second Ford commercial. But when you do commercials like that for the union, people really are making their money doing commercials. So I booked that, and I think to date, they stopped running it, but I made easily $25,000 just based on how much they like showed the
Oh, how much?
commercial over the.
Oh, so it wasn't like a one-time 25,000. It was
Mhm.
over the life of the commercial.
Mhm. So I think that for your time, you get paid like $1,000. It might actually even be like closer to 700. But over the course of, oh, we want to pick it up and pay over, and these people are going to pay for us to use it, and these people are going to pay for us to use it, and these people are going to pay for us to use it. Over the course of 2 years, I would sometimes just get a check in the mail that was $2,000, which is why residuals are so important, because it will truly sustain you through stuff. There would be times I'm checking the mail before I get in my car to go drive for Lyft. And I would get the check and like cry and then go back in my house. I'm like, I don't have to drive for Lyft today. It's okay. But
Wow.
my mom was, because being Nigerian and being an artist, my mom is still hoping I choose something else, high key. But finishing grad school, coming back to Atlanta, getting an agent almost immediately, booking a commercial almost immediately. I knew my agents were like, okay, she's good, we'll keep her. And then I also, for me, was like, okay, I'm not making the worst possible decision of all time. So I think it's that, beginner's luck bias that's there, but if I hadn't gotten it, I don't know if I would have been able to last as long as I did before the next thing that really was meaningful.
I think I have this answer, but I'd like some clarity from you.
Yeah.
What has been your best experience on set or in any production, whether it be TV or movie? Like, what was that?
It was a short film called Woodwork that has not come out yet, by Alex Woodard. And it's about a couple who, I'm in Atlanta, so we have one of the first cop cities that were built, and as they were building it, cold blood killed one of the protesters that were there. And the area that they're building this place is close to Alex's heart. His dad grew up in that area. So he wrote this short film about this couple that is trying to decide whether or not they're going to break up as the militarized police force is trying to clear them out of that park. And we made it 2-3 years ago. But the prequel to that short film is doing so well in the festival circuit. They're like, let's finish this up and then we'll go into the next one. But that, as an artist, was so incredibly fulfilling. It was, there's two people in it. It was me and him, me and my co-star, Steven Ruffin. But working with someone else who's so, what does Erykah Badu say? I'm an artist and I'm sensitive about my shit. Like someone who's so serious about the craft. It was really awesome because we were both able to dive really deep, and there's a lot of mutual respect and safety in that. Alex was incredible as a director and really honoring the fact that we cared about the story and the art of it. And then for me, especially, in so many ways, art is my general ministry. I don't have the capacity to be in the street protesting and tear gas is being thrown at me. Like, for the sake of my nervous system, that is not how I can show up in a movement. But making art that makes people think is exactly how I want to show up. So being able to do that project, because imagine how poignant that is now. And it was poignant when we made it. So being able to do that, I think we did it for like a week. It paid. Because so often in short films, you're not really sure like what you're walking away with, but it was like enough that like, okay, like, yeah, thank you for this. I had, input on my costume and what I thought made sense, and being able to collaborate with hair, makeup, costumes, and then tell this really amazing story. Yes, I have been on $90 million projects, but this short film about Cop City is, to date, probably the most proud I am of the work that I've done. And I haven't seen it. But I haven't seen it. But the experience of it is one of my most profound moments. I will also say, though, to be fair, that I got to watch an early screening of The Color Purple once it was locked. And I went to the studio to see it. So while I was sitting on the Warner Brothers lot in this movie theater and the credits start rolling, all the actors who were in there who had not seen it before but were in it, I could just hear all of us crying. And I just remember thinking, like, as my name like scrolled up the credits, I was like, if I never act again, no one can say I didn't do it. So it gave me a lot of closure in terms of being satisfied with the work that I have like put out into the world. Only up from here because I already did it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel you, and I'm glad I asked that because I would have thought it would be no brainer. Nothing even comes close with Color Purple, but when you like you said, the story was on Woodrow, like you said, it was very personal, but it's larger than you, and it's something that even though it was filmed years ago, it still rings true. Like, it might even ring truer today than it did when you filmed it.
Scarily, yes. And it's called Woodwork. So it is on my
Woodwork.
IMDb. It's just like
Woodwork.
still in post-production.
Yeah, it's showing as upcoming.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to, you know. When I asked, I was like, so, what's taking so long? I want to see it.
What did they say? What is taking so long?
So one, truly, Thomasville, if you have a chance to see that anywhere, go watch it. It's gorgeous. Thomasville, the prequel to this. I mean, when I tell you, I have not seen a short film like in every festival that they applied to. It didn't make sense to have them running in the same circuit. Okay. So now they're circling back to post-production on this and putting it out. But when I asked, and I won't jinx it, so I'm not going to say which ones, but I was like, you know, like, what's the plan, guys? Like, what are you thinking? What's going on? Because him and the DP are really cool guys. Abhijit is our DP, and they were like, we're trying to get it to premiere at insert two like very popular, prominent festivals here. And I was like, oh, cool. Take your time. Cool. Yeah. And I was like, I need to prepare my life for this to premiere at that festival. I'll go work on that.
Okay.
So I take it. But also I trust it. This is something close to him. It's his, and he owns it. I know it'll come out. And I find that things like this work out in the timing they're meant to.
Yeah, so I won't get too much into like the indie short film part of your career. I think we'll save that for our next conversation.
Sure.
Yeah, because there's a lot to get into, because like there's also the part that I see that you've worked with some of the same people over and over, and that's something I also want to get into. So I don't want to make this go too long because I still have our lightning round. So,
okay, right.
Yeah. So before we get into that, I know like I gave you like your high moment there, but where was the point where you felt closest to actually giving up? Like the part where you felt like this is not working out, this is not for me. Like the part where you particularly felt like I'm done. I'm just not doing this anymore. Like, do you have a moment like that sticks out?
I feel that way probably quarterly, honestly.
Wow.
Yeah, I actually just posted a video on TikTok about how probably once a month I consider quitting acting forever. And not forever. Forever. I still want to do theater, but just like letting go of any sort of ambition with doing film and TV and just like not putting emotional weight into that anymore. I had an experience last week that shouldn't have been as discouraging as it was for like 5 minutes, but I was at a table read. And I mean, people are going to be so excited about this project. It's a reboot of something that was really beloved. They're doing it really well. And there are a couple characters, because I'm not casting it right yet. There are a couple characters that were available. And I was like, has anybody been cast in this role yet? And the answer was no. And I was like, I'm going to treat this like a callback and I'm going to book my role. And then talking to somebody afterwards, after the entire cast, several of the writers and just like random people from the streamer, I almost said the name, came up and they were like, thank you guys so much. You did such a good job. You brought this to life in ways like that can be really difficult for like the writers to sit down and do. Like you really brought every single character to life and we're so grateful. And no one actually has to say any of that. So the fact that several people from different like chunks did, I believed them. And also, you know, I'm a good actor. So I like already felt good about it, but to get that feedback was great. I even reached out to my agents, told them about the role and was like, apparently this has not been cast. Please look into this with the casting director, a casting director who I am familiar with and has called me in for all kinds of stuff. I have not auditioned for this show at all. And on my way out the door, I found out that they're already looking like have whittled it down to like 2 different people to play this role already. And it's just like, what I think I've found to be the most discouraging as of late is watching roles pop up on projects I would have loved to have been considered for and didn't even get to audition. There was a role on Counterpart, and like sci-fi is my fucking jam, and that show is about time travel too, which is also my jam. Also quantum physics, tangential, we can get into another time. And there's a role, when I tell you 2 different people sent me the breakdown and they're like, are you auditioning for this yet? And I reached out to my reps, they requested, because they have to ask if I can audition. And I couldn't, and no one ever got back to them. I submitted myself, my agent submitted me, never even heard back. And this is post Marvel, this is post Color Purple coming out, this is post Hawkeye. So to leave that table read and know that this was something that's like literally going to be down the street filming, and I didn't even have a chance to audition, just felt like, but people are leaving LA to come here. But if this is only getting cast out of that city, but with somebody I know who likes me and knows I can do this, then like, where are the opportunities going to come from? Because that's where the producing comes in, right? You create stuff for yourself, and that's very much a thing that is true and real. But if I'm trying to financially sustain myself with this, it can't just be projects I'm making for myself right now. And really, truly, the thing that made me start to question for real, for like sincerely, like, do I need to pivot entirely, was in the same week, I want to say, Viola Davis was talking about how she gets called the Black Meryl Streep, even though she has more accolades on paper than Meryl Streep does. Oh. Taraji was talking about how she almost walked away from Color Purple because they weren't willing to pay her enough. And they were going to make them like drive themselves to set, when traditionally you get picked up and driven to set. Like that's a very normal feature when you get cast and you're that important to a project. Because also they just know where you are. Like if nothing else, they know you'll be there on time if they send a car to come get you, kind of thing. Uh-huh. And Hyman Jonsu had said that he never met a role that paid him fairly in his entire career. And I was like, if these 3 people who have careers that I am looking to as a point of reference, as a point of reverence, and they're still feeling like the money isn't there, and that is something that inevitably is a dig at your like self-worth, self-esteem, not to mention your fucking pocket. I was like, if that's what I'm reaching towards, maybe I got to stop reaching. Because so then to go, okay, but at least the opportunities, maybe the chance, maybe I'll be the exception. And then I'm still sitting at the table read with all of these people in the room who could, with a snap of their fingers, arguably change the entire trajectory of my life. And I can't even audition for the thing I'm reading. That was last week. Yeah. No, to be fair, I think that was 2 weeks ago. Today is Tuesday. That was like 2 weeks ago.
Okay. So how do you deal with something like that without like letting it mess with your confidence?
I had to learn a long time ago that my self-worth cannot be dictated by other people valuing me. And I think that's just like a person, like a people thing. Like everybody needs to get to that point. I was able to accept that this is show business. It's not personal. Also, it's not about talent. It's not that I'm not good enough. I just am not famous enough, or I'm maybe not in the right region right now. What can I do to pivot those things? But ultimately, it was knowing that I am good enough, knowing that if it doesn't work, it's not because I'm a terrible person or like a shitty human being. And this is probably the biggest thing, actually, if there was anything someone was going to take away from listening to this, watching this, acting is not my whole personality. This is something that I am very good at, and it sometimes pays me, something that I love to do, but it is not all of who I am. It does not define me. It's just something it's a job I happen to have.
Okay.
And a lot of people make acting their whole personality. And I mean, they'll make a lot of things their whole personality, right? The manga they like to read, the R&B artist they think is amazing. But I don't do that. I contain multitudes. But also, there are several things that I find interesting that contribute to who I am, And I do my best to not let things like that harm my sense of self. Though, as you have heard, it can be deflating when it comes to actual like career trajectory.
You mentioned an experience you had on set with very, I don't want to say racist, but the director made what was clearly a racist remark.
Yeah.
And like, is that something that you could share, like the story with the audience here?
Oh, sure. I actually forget this happened until other people bring it up. So I was cast to play the sister to a character that was having flashbacks to 16th century Nigeria. So the pool of actors in Atlanta who can speak Yoruba convincingly is real small. And also I'm a good actor, but I had the opportunity to be on the show because I could do that. And we were speaking Yoruba in the episode. And we're in this like hut, I guess, makeshift hut, and costumes, I mean, went all out. We were in our indigo. That I had no issues with. But I thought it was weird when we sat down at a table and there was like a bowl and forks and a cup. And I was like, okay, I mean, this is fine, I guess. And no shade to anybody, respectfully. Like, I don't work in props. That's not my business. But I did turn to somebody and go like, we still eat with our hands culturally. So why is there a wooden fork on the table right now? This is weird. Because it's weird on a couple of levels. It's weird because we don't do this now. So it wouldn't have happened then. But also your understanding of just like, well, to African it up, we'll use a wooden fork instead. Not even the main issue. So we're sitting there, I make a comment to someone who like would understand, wasn't even complaining out loud. And one of the actors was like, oh, you guys wouldn't use these? And we were like, no. And somebody was like, oh, come clear them off the table. Clear it off the table, no problem. I asked about the food and we weren't sure if it was okay to eat it because we were supposed to be at dinner. And no one could really give us a straight answer, but we were already actively eating it and no one would answer whether or not we could, if it was like safe, because stuff sits out for a while. So after a point, if it's not being heated, you shouldn't be eating it. So finally they got us like human grade, whatever. We're eating, someone calls cut and I go to take a sip of water to like wash down what I'm eating. And there's a bug in my cup. And I was like, oh gosh, if you know anything about me, your girl doesn't do bugs. I don't do bugs. And I was like, oh my God. And it was just like a fruit fly or something. And I kind of spit it out and I'm worried. And the person comes and takes my cup and brings me a new one. And the person who's directing the episode goes, well, you know, it's Africa.
Excuse me?
And I just remember like slowly turning around and I was like, what? And they're like, you know, that's what it's like there, or whatever the fuck he said. It was so like people's blood ran cold. You could tell it got so quiet. The guy didn't understand what he did wrong. One of the main cast members, one of the series regulars, got up and walked away entirely. And I'm sitting there kind of like dazed, like, and I look over and one of the people who's in the scene with us, who's on the show, is crying because of how inappropriate it was. I was like, that's not okay. That stuff cannot happen. I think she pulled the director to the side and asked him like to apologize because it was so inappropriate. I walk away because I'm like, that's show business, right? And not because it's okay, but I think it's just something that like it rolled off my back. Of course, this man comes up to apologize and is like, I'm sorry you were offended.
Oh.
I don't quite understand what I said wrong, but but I was told I need to come apologize. So I'm sorry you were offended by what I said. And I was like, thanks. And we finished the day and we go home and I get a call from producers on the show. And it felt like it was damage control. So we didn't start like tweeting about how we had a racist experience. Because mind you, while we're doing it, you can tell that the guy felt like it was wasting his time. At one point, he actually said, can you pick up the pace of the scene? Because I'm already going to have to cut some of the end of it.
Wow.
And this is a significant cultural flashback for this character. Because when I tell you they built 16th century Nigeria, like it was in more than one episode. And this is guy was he edits episodes. I guess as an editor, they gave him an opportunity to direct. Anyway, this is getting long-winded. We went to be on it, and the guy said some racist shit. And when he was kind of called to account, it was a half-hearted apology, and there was some damage control from producers, but that was it, and we were never brought back.
Do you feel like that was in response to that, or do you think it was just like the natural, like you were only meant to be there for one episode?
I don't know, because when we were in the makeup trailer, someone said something about us being in the next episode. I'm trying to figure out how much detail is actually necessary. Someone mentioned that we're in the next episode, so they were using the makeup in a way that was like, oh, it's okay because this can just be yours when you come back.
Oh,
and then
okay.
we were not in the same episode. We're not in the next episode anymore. Because also, what is the response? Am I about to sit here and teach you why historically that was deeply inappropriate and just like vaguely inaccurate comment to make?
Jeez.
Or am I just gonna go, okay, and then someone calls action and I do my scene again as if I was not affected deeply by what was said? Because that's what happens to women on set, to people of color on set, is some random white person says some shady shit and you're not supposed to react because you're going to be the one who's overreacting.
Okay.
So we all just went home. That's what happened.
I actually remember watching this show. So yeah, no problem. But yeah.
Oh, did you go and look up what I was referring to?
Oh no, I saw the scene you were talking about where you were speaking Yoruba and everything. Yeah, I saw that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Still a proud moment. Though some aunties at church threw some shade about my pronunciation. And I was like, you're watching, auntie. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, hey, you did what you had to do. And I was surprised, like the entire scene wasn't Yoruba. Like it was, yeah, I'm like, okay. All right, CW, I see you.
Yeah, I thought it was, there's a lot of good intentions.
All right. So yeah, like I said, the whole indie short film stuff, producing and other stuff, like we'll get to that the next time we have you here.
Okay.
All right. So now I want to get into some lightning round questions. Just the first thing that pops into your head, just something that will let us get to know you a bit better and the industry better.
Okay.
So the first thing I would ask is, what's the best acting note you've ever gotten?
Take your time. Also, you only need to get it right once.
Okay. What would you say is your superpower as an actor?
Empathy, pattern recognition. You said lightning round.
No, go ahead. No, actually, I'd like to hear that.
No, I mean, so much of acting, you're just being someone else. So a significant portion of it is script analysis. And why is my character saying this? Why is this the response to the question I was asked or the statement I was asked? And you're able to really build a real person because there are only so many scenarios where a person with this background would say something like this in response to whatever. I wish I could give you a better example or a real-time example. But just how much TV I watch, how much I like pay attention to people, it really helps then go, okay, that was a very specific thing to say. So like, why did they say that? And that also helps you remember your lines because you know why you're responding the way you're responding and why you would pronounce something that way. So if the line is like, oh, I really like your shoes, that will come out very differently if that's an insult versus high praise. If I've never owned shoes before, or you're wearing shoes that I wanted and you bought the last pair. Okay. It helps you make sense of how to interact with the word sometimes.
So it's funny, that sort of leads us into the next question. What's harder, memorizing lines or letting them go? Memorizing them for sure. Okay.
My memory will throw away shit I actually need, let alone lines I don't need to remember. Mind you, I could still quote monologues from 16 years ago and forget the names of people I spend months with.
Oh, so, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. What's the one skill outside of acting that secretly makes you better at acting?
Ooh. I learned how to garden last year. And there's been many a metaphor that I've gleaned from the process. But specifically, it requires literally and figuratively sowing seeds that you will not see the fruit from for some time. It's taught me patience in a different way.
Let's see. Auditions, are they thrilling or draining?
tell myself that they are thrilling, and I'm starting to enjoy them more. For a long time, they were draining.
Your biggest on-set pet peeve?
Being treated like a toddler.
Oh, explain.
I mentioned earlier, they sometimes infantilize actors. Some of it truly is like you need to know where people are. So, hey, I'm gonna go use the restroom. Sometimes someone will come with you to like walk you over there, and you're like, I know where the fucking bathroom is, bro. Okay, thanks, I guess. But sometimes people aren't giving you full information that would be useful for you to have. Because you feel like you need to protect the actors, and it's like you're protecting me from the wrong shit, to be honest. But I think often I'm also navigating those spaces with a little bit of producer brain going. So it's information that would help me as someone who needs to know what's going on all the time. I'm sure there are other actors who are just fine with somebody leading them to the bathroom and they can turn everything off in their brain. That's not how my brain works. Because in general, it's also just triggering to be treated like I'm not capable when I have to do so much constantly to prove that I am, and wouldn't be here if I wasn't.
Gotcha. Okay, you mentioned Lyft earlier. What's the weirdest job you've had alongside acting?
Define weirdest.
Most unusual, the job that people would say is the least glamorous, as the way people see acting as a glamorous job.
Interesting. I just stopped doing this in like September, but I spent 2 years, especially during the strike, home organizing and move management. So I worked with a company who would either come into your house and like, organize your closets and your pantry and like make sure everything goes in bins and is color coded. Or people live in, 5,000 square foot house. We would go pack up their entire house, move their stuff somewhere else, and then unpack it for them. So,
is that because you are like that type of like organized person, or is it something that allows you to just turn your brain off, or is it a creativity thing? What do you think led you to something like that?
I think I need structure for my brain, but structured chaos is acceptable. Okay. So I didn't like the aesthetic home organizing as much as just like categorizing things so that you knew where they were and like that made sense. So I organize our stuff very much, but like, mind you, I don't fold my clothes. If it goes in a drawer, that means it can be wrinkled. Do you know what I mean? But actually, home organizing is probably one of the hardest jobs I've ever had, because not only are you constantly trying to logic your way through a problem, like categorizing, like color coding, like where does this go? Do they still need this? Do we need to replace this? You're also managing people's feelings and expectations and doing it like under a clock. So it was really exhausting, because then also it's physical labor, right? So if I spend all day taking hangers down and replacing the hanger and then making sure it's in the right spot so it's color coded, that is crazy upper body workout. If we're moving and I'm packing up your kitchen, and people have so much china and like crystal. And I'm packing all that up. Sure, that part might just be tedious because I'm standing the whole time, but now I need to gently pick up this heavy ass this box of crystal, and then like carry it halfway across this 5,000 square foot house to like put it with the stack with the other boxes, and then walk back and do it again. One of the hardest jobs I've ever had. Damn. But it was really satisfying too.
Okay. Let's see. A character choice you fought for that actually paid off.
Define fought for.
Like you said, maybe like advocating for. It wasn't something that was necessarily standard, and it was your input that made it come to life, I guess.
I just be making choices for real. I don't know that I've ever had a power struggle with anyone, but I do know that for Hawkeye, with the character work that I did, this is a long answer. It's Hawkeye, short answer. But the character Wendy Conrad was from the specific city in New York, where, like New York State, where the median income was $400,000. And what that means usually is that people are making millions and they live in this place, and they have servants that make thousands and they live in this place. And I decided that I came from a family that made millions. So all the decisions I made for my character are based on growing up that affluent in a different part of New York City. But then to end up being a police officer, how does that track? And then you fill in the pieces in between. So if you go back and watch the show, my character, like the wedding ring I wear, biggest rock they had in the box for me to choose from rings. All of the clothes are like designer, very expensive, like high quality stuff. There's a point I was talking to Reese, who directed half the episodes and was executive producer. And I was like, yeah, well, I mean, Wendy's on the bomb squad. So if she was doing blah, 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 I think this would be the case. And he's like, yeah, that's fair. Anybody tell me she was on the bomb squad? I just decided she was on the bomb squad because her nickname is Bombshell. And in the comics, she juggled bombs. So I just decided. So I thought it was wild that no one really checked why. And we didn't have a conversation about it, but I'd made so many decisions about my character that when it's time to have discussions about, like, what is she wearing? How should the scene go? How's she carrying herself? Like, all of it was influenced by the character work I did because of that, like, one little bit of information that was on the character's, like, Marvel wiki.
Yeah, and that's why she had Bombshell engraved on the duffel bag that she gave Hawkeye.
It's already on there because that's the comic book character's, like, hero name.
Okay.
I didn't choose that, but
okay, that wasn't you, but it was.
In the comic book, she juggled bombs.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
I know. So I was like, nobody fought me on it, which I think is more interesting. Okay. I just decided, and everybody was like, that's cool.
Okay. All right. I have two more for you.
Okay.
Dream director you'd like to work with?
Ooh. At this point, Coogler. I'd be curious, story-wise, to work with the Daniels that did Everything Everywhere All at Once. That's because that movie is, like, high up of the quality.
He's pretty young too, right?
Yeah, the guys are, I want to say they're in their 30s, yeah. So there's still time. Who else? I don't know that I have a specific actor in mind, but I would love to work with some of the actors who are now directing as well, because of course there's a lot of decisions to make as a director, but people don't realize as an actor, if your role is not big enough, you're never talking about your character with a director. There's not a conversation at all. Unless you have a specific question, that might even be for a writer. Okay. So if you're saying one line, usually you're only ever talking to a first AD. If no note is good. If you get a note, that's still somebody else telling you that note. So being able to work with another actor, especially on something indie probably, would be really cool to, like, nerd out about the actor stuff. Because for me, the character work is what's so interesting about acting, as you can tell. And that's what you get to do on stage. And that's why I like stage acting so much. So being able to do that for film would be really cool. And that's one thing I really liked about Blitz, is he let us do that because he's a Renaissance man. He's also a musician. He's also a writer. So for him, it was very, like, I know how all this comes together. I understand the collaboration in this. Some people come in and they just, like, are good with pictures and they actually don't understand the acting enough for real to even guide you respectfully.
Okay. And the last one, and this one doesn't have to be, I know it might take a while for you to come up with your answer, or you might already have this on your mind. But if you could start in a biopic of someone, a historical figure, a famous person, who would it be?
That's a good ass question. When I was in elementary school, they called me Flojo because I ran so fast. I never ended up pursuing running track. But I think somebody else already has the rights, and I think they're already making that movie. Okay. I think if Anita Baker ever did a biopic, like, I kind of favor her, that could make sense. But you know who it really is? I forgot about this. Cicely Tyson.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That would be such a, like, that'd be crazy honor. I imagine if there was a line, I'm not at the front of it for that opportunity, but I would love the chance to play Cicely Tyson in a biopic. That would be incredible.
Okay. All right. And when I'm interviewing people who are in the arts, I like them to leave with giving a piece of advice to anyone who is either looking to get into that industry or looking to follow their footsteps. So do you have any advice for anyone who is maybe the most they've done is some high school acting, or someone who is in acting school right now, or someone who's taking acting classes, or someone who's even where you started, where they haven't even gotten an agent yet, but they're like, this is what I want to do with my life. Like, what advice do you have for anyone who's in any of those steps of the way?
If I had any advice for anybody wanting to get into acting, I would say two things. If you want to be an actor so that you can be famous and rich, it's easier to do something else. And if you love acting and you're pursuing this with, like, you know, your whole heart, and you're passionate about the art of acting, don't lose sight of the fact that this is show business. It's show business.
Yeah, Adetinpo Thomas, I want to thank you so much for being here. This was really fun. Like, there's still so like there is there are like literally two more careers we could even talk about here, and we haven't even scratched the surface on them. So I am
Fact.
taking you up on your offer of having you back here. I really appreciate that. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for being here, and thank you to everyone watching the Well Actually podcast.
Thanks,
I'm
y'all.
going to try and do this a bit more regularly. Be on the lookout, and remember, rate, review, subscribe, share with a friend. We'll do this again soon. All right, take it easy.
Thanks, y'all.